Hi, and welcome to the weekly predictions based on astrology for the week of August 16, 2021. In terms of the stock market direction, I think it's going to be an overall down week. Monday through Thursday look like down days, and there is a slight chance of market turning briefly to up on Friday. That said, I think the next Monday and Tuesday, which are 23rd and 24th of August, are going to be down days as well. So in terms of the specific types of influences that are noteworthy for this week, I think that on Monday there may be increased focus in the news on things like communication, transportation, international relations, trade, retail sales, long distance travel and transportation, I guess trade, import, export, shipments, etc. And the news may be either upsetting or at least they may elicit some divided opinions, and it could be along the lines of concerns over the safety of travel or shipments, delays in travel and shipment, some miscommunication, delayed transportation, delayed agreements. Basically, some partners may not be seeing eye to eye and therefore agreement may not proceed, or there's a delay in shipping something. There may also be some transportation delays due to disruptions of schedule or some missing parts, missing information, and the issue itself may actually be quite small, so perhaps some small part is missing or small part is misaligned. However, it may have greater than usual repercussions at this time. And it could also be like along the lines of report coming out, but some small piece of data is missing there. And even though it may be a small omission, the information is skewed to the point where, again, it causes a stalemate and the agreement or deal may not go through because, again, this information, however small it is still very critical. On the 16th through the 17th of August, globally there may be increased focus on excessive precipitation, contamination of water supply, maybe another outbreak of some infectious disease. And again, it could be anything to do with like something that elicits fever or inflammation in the body. And generally speaking, there may be increased focus on things like I said, precipitation, navy, oil, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, healthcare. So again, anything that may be either is used to, say, treat such conditions, or it could be that there is, say, a spill of some chemical or oil and or contamination of the water supply, and it leads to an outbreak of some infectious disease that again is due to lack of clean water, for example, or because of some bacterium or something that multiplies in the contaminated water. Also on the 16th and 17th, there may be increased focus on, again, some either missing detail in some report or calls for providing that missing detail or fixing that small, like I said, part or something that was off on especially Monday. And there may be a divided sort of set of opinions. On the one hand, maybe a part, some group of people may be demanding, again, more details to be provided, or those minor differences to be adjusted for things to align precisely. And then there may be another sort of group of people or another group that may be insisting that it's okay, and at this point it's kind of splitting of the hairs, and really it's more important to focus on the larger picture. So for example, if there's a discussion whether or not to release funding for some project, again, there may be this argument or arguments over whether or not to release it even though some details are missing, where again one side can be arguing that let's release it right away, it's a humanitarian issue, we need to provide funds for some important issue, and then the other group of people will say or will be arguing against releasing things until those exact details are known, the data are all in, and everything is aligned exactly perfectly. On the 17th through the 19th of August, there may be increased focus globally on gold, and its value may be fluctuating more than usual. I think it's more likely that the value of gold may go up at this time. And also, as I said, 17th through the 19th may see increased arguments, and again, something along the lines of like details. Some details are missing, or there's too much detail provided in say some report where it's just too difficult for the audience to keep up with that. And the areas where such a report may come up or some issues may arise, again, is related to pharmaceuticals, healthcare, maybe sales of pharmaceuticals or some agreements or deals, also just in general commerce, communication, transportation, social media, and also education. So if there are any agreements or deals or projects in those areas, again, 17th through the 19th of August may see sort of heated discussions that may almost involve some threats or just, again, people not necessarily agreeing on the issues, but to the point where they may be kind of things get more heated than usual, and one side may be accused of kind of taking some detail or some minor error and kind of making a the mountain out of the molehill, and the other party may be saying, or the other side may be arguing that, yeah, this is a small issue, but really it's significant to a greater degree than perhaps is obvious. And so that might be sort of the essence of the argument. And it could be, again, missing statistics, some communication not being quite accurate, or it could be just too much, data, too many tables with some numbers, and just, again, things are being lost in that, excess of detail. On Wednesday, the 18th, generally, I think, again, it might be a down day, but I think there's a possibility that in the morning, the down influence will be stronger, and by the afternoon, things will start kind of reverting to up a little bit. And that could be on some news coming in the afternoon on Wednesday about either some legal agreement or changes in some laws, or perhaps exciting news about some leader of a large organization. It could be along the lines of that leader being, say, like a CEO or politician or another prominent person like an actor, and that person may be featured in the news either because they're doing something extraordinary, maybe they earn an award for some amazing performance or some achievement, or perhaps it could be that they're just really flamboyant and they're attention seeking and they're doing something to draw attention to themselves, and it's over the top. So it could be a positive or obviously negative, but either way, there may be some prominent person, some prominent leader attracting excessive attention to them for whatever reason. Again, could be their actual achievement, or it could be just acting out over the top, but there may be, again, that may be seen as a positive development by at least part of the large sizable number of traders, and I think that may bring market potentially, again, starting to reverse to up on Wednesday afternoon compared to Wednesday morning, where I think there may be more of a down influence. For China, August 18th through the 20th appear to be significant in terms of potentially news about deals, partnerships, or projects that involve large-scale manufacturing or construction, so anything to do with like steel or metal, large machinery, and like, airport building or bridge building or tunnel, or just really like trains or something like planes, some really large construction projects or large machinery being used for such projects. So there may be like a start of the new project announced, or some changes or disruptions in the established project. So maybe there was a project or a building or some construction site has been kind of out there for a long time, and now there's a change, and maybe it's oversight, maybe government steps in to change, or corporation steps in to change how things are being done, and or if there's like an old agreement, say like an old contract in place or an old process is in place, those things may undergo change, again, new leadership, or a new process maybe, or a new group again in charge of oversight of that project. And it could be particularly involving either locations that are hidden underground or remote somewhere, or some places that have to do with like end of life cycle type of activities. So maybe something that's like decaying underground, cemetery comes to mind, or prison, hospital, underground kind of mining locations, recycling facilities for sure, anything that you kind of, hospitals or places where basically things are, or whatever, maybe, I don't know where they're trying to, if there are any places like old folks home kind of a place. So anywhere waste recycling, like I said, it could also be underground storage or even underwater storage, anything that's again hidden and is sort of decaying and it's coming to the end of its life cycle. Those are the facilities that may be, or processes where again we may hear about either large scale construction projects or processes that were in place that may undergo change at this time. And it could be because again there's just a decision made to again change how the process is done, or it could be a forced change due to some, say, disruption like an earthquake or an accident, and it causes structural damage to the buildings, or even unearths something, that something comes from the that was hidden, it comes out and therefore it needs to be addressed. Or it could be something as benign or even exciting as maybe there's a new archaeological discovery, like an ancient relic is unearthed, and as obviously would be interesting if something like that were to happen. Let's see, for Friday, like I said, there's a slight chance of market actually turning up on Friday. For the US, the dates from the 20th to 23rd, so this Friday and into the weekend, we may see increased focus on things like banks, earnings, and finance. And there may be some slight concerns about those areas, such as, lack of earnings, some instability, some financial losses, accounting errors, some deceptive manipulation, financial malpractices or financial manipulation, or some changes in how financial institutions do their business that, again, may elicit concerns about financial stability or about their earnings. Also for the US, the dates from the 20th through the 23rd appear to be significant in terms of it being a intensification of something that's actually an ongoing transit. And basically there will be some increased focus on things like oil, gas, again, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, also beverages, and excessive precipitation. So anything to do with like floods, hurricanes, water erosion, water contamination, and other Neptunian matters that could even include religion, drugs, music, etc. And again, this is a part of the ongoing influence that actually will be in place for the US for some months, but it will just intensify this particular weekend, I guess Friday through this weekend, and it may involve either concerns about those areas, or it could also indicate some increased news about some large scale projects that involve, say, oil or water. For example, it could be like laying of undersea cables or pipelines for oil, or it could be the need to protect, oil manufacturing facilities or something due to like a hurricane or some precipitation, or having to deal with water pollution or contamination, or addressing like chemical spill or something along those lines. Or if it's, say, a healthcare facility or even a pharmaceutical company, they may be dealing with things like spying, hacking, or some accounting error, or even some basically some mistake creeping in, and things just need to be addressed there. So there basically may be some concerns about those areas for the US. Again, this is an ongoing multi-month developing transit, and at the same time, this particular weekend, there may be some increased focus on those areas. And also, generally speaking, there may be increased focus on, as I mentioned, also finance and banks, and that could be, again, due to some potential concerns about losses, but also the losses may be due to, again, spying, hacking, or something that's unseen and unclear, or it could even be concerned about just some changes that are not clear, and therefore, because of this confusion and lack of clarity, there may be kind of nervousness. And as I mentioned at the beginning, that the 23rd and 24th, which is Monday and Tuesday of next week, also look like down days to me. So basically there may be some news for the US that are significant over the upcoming weekend, where they may lead to market down at the early next week as well. Another long-term influence for the US that's worth mentioning, and I mentioned that in previous months, but it's kind of restarting again, so to speak, is from about the 24th of August through about the 28th of February of next year, so through basically end of February of 2022, there will be some important slowly unfolding transit from Neptune, which will form basically a T-square between this transiting Neptune and Mars and Neptune that are in the natal chart of the US. And as you probably already have seen from just my previous videos and in general, that T-squares typically are difficult transits, and specifically the planets like Neptune have to do with things like confusion and deception and things just being unclear, and also pollution, things of that nature. And Mars has to do with things like, of course, sports and competition, but also fires, explosions, and military and weapons and fighting. And so in the US chart specifically, it is actually, in the chart that I'm using at least, it is in the 7th house of relationships, partnerships, and, you know, like international relations, like one-on-one partnerships or some agreements. And it is, it rules 5th house that is associated with things like stock market, risky ventures, but also creative ventures, and also, again, like I said, risky things that may be perhaps, you know, gambling, things of that nature, casinos. And also it is in the sign of Gemini, which has to do with communication, transportation, commerce, social media, things of that nature. So basically, long story short, this time starting from, again, end of August through end of February of next year should seem likely some miscommunication incidents, possibly involving US military, especially Navy, and again, it could be like a foggy weather, and so some, you know, some vehicle is not seen through, you know, too much fog, or a deal is reached, but it's not clear what the conditions are, or the communications are not clear. And again, this may be unintentional just because this is the time where, again, either weather, either just general mood is such that things are not conducive to, you know, clear communication. And also, again, unfortunately, with the Mars being involved, it can lead to accidents, like maybe a maritime accident that leads to an oil spill, or an accident where something is accidentally, you know, shot just because, again, it's not clear whether it's like a real threat or it's not a real threat. At the same time, there's also increased probability of threats that are, again, not quite seen, and because Neptune has to do with things like drugs, chemicals, even religion, and also music, movies, things that are sort of are not very tangible, I should say. So maybe, again, spying, hacking, but also some chemical pollution, for example, you know, some other kind of, you know, threats that are not easily identifiable. Let's see. In terms of the upcoming weeks, for the Glance Ahead section, I did make some updates to my predictions on my blog at lastunka.com if you want to check that out in written form. Maybe it's easier to follow for some folks. But basically, in the upcoming weeks, the week of August 30th looks like a very important week globally and for some specific countries. And in particular, I would say even starting from the 29th of August through the 3rd of September, it is an important time for countries including US and Haiti. And there may be some increased kind of either tensions, turmoil, bad weather, and things of that nature. And for global influences, there may be increased focus on, like, again, excessive precipitation, oil, chemicals, infectious diseases, pharmaceuticals, etc. And it may be there may be a fairly strong down move either the entire week or especially on September 3rd. Let's see, for Haiti, as I mentioned, this particular time, upcoming time, 29th of August through the 3rd of September, may also be quite difficult in terms of just transits to its chart. I did look at the transits that occurred during this earthquake that we just had, unfortunately, a very tragic, very powerful earthquake, 7.2, that hit Haiti with thousands of people either dead or wounded. And it occurred on the 14th morning, 14th of August, and basically I did predict that there would be some accident or some disaster right around the 10th through the 12th of August, and that was due to Mars basically forming a square to the moon nodes, which Mars in, or really any kind of a difficult planet like Mars, Saturn, etc. in combination, or difficult transits to moon nodes typically coincides with strong earthquakes, disasters, accidents, etc. And I was a little bit surprised to see that it actually occurred on the 14th morning, and there were also some other situations like we had for 6.9 earthquake in Alaska. There was also a airplane crash in Turkey of a Russian firefighting airplane, and of course there's escalation in Afghanistan. So the 14th morning, interestingly, was actually where the midpoint between Mars and Mercury, which was following Mars very closely. So the midpoint between those two planets is what had precisely squared the nodes. And at the same time, we still have this ongoing Saturn-Uranus square slowly unfolding through like the end of next year. And specifically on the morning of the 14th, Moon had formed a T-square with those two planets. So definitely was a triggering kind of a time. And unfortunately, again, this upcoming time in the 29th of August through the 3rd of September, we will have another even kind of a slightly more difficult time in terms of, again, transits to Haiti natal chart, and there may be again some potentially additional concerns about either some difficult circumstances. And what is also happening again for Haiti specifically at this time, there is a transit of Uranus, which indicates of things like sudden jolts, shocks, and kind of a power loss, accidents, is actually currently tightly squaring the country's moon nodes, and we will see that continuing from August through actually October of this year. And at the same time, the transiting moon nodes are actually squaring the Hades Pluto, and Pluto has to do with things like, again, unfortunately, death and rebirth, major transformation, usually difficult times that is like very transformative time. At the same time, things first need to kind of collapse before they can be rebuilt. And so the next few months for Haiti, unfortunately, don't look so positive. And unfortunately, this may be, again, things may get worse before they get better. And then after this time period of 2021, there are a few also time periods in 2022 that I would specifically note for, again, Haiti. So I looked briefly at its chart. And so for next year, due to various transits of difficult planets to the Hades natal chart, I would point out the end of January, then early March, late March, April to May, and then mid to late September of 2022 as times where, again, there might be more difficult periods in terms of either accidents or some weather events or just general tensions. And so definitely a time of major, either surprising, unfortunately, unpleasant surprises for the country, but also a time where, major transformation can happen. In that sense, there's obviously hope for kind of renewing things with a better, more stable, perspective, or rebuilding, like especially energy sources, anything to do with electricity, or even empowering people. So there's definitely a way to do this in a positive way. But again, there might be some difficult times there as well. Let's see, for the US, in upcoming months, the next time where we may see a peak of either some activities, and especially focus on like gold and silver prices, more kind of increased news about various financial policies, as well as globally, unfortunately, a little bit more instability would be middle to late December. And in particular, the date of 15th of December seems to be important for both the US and globally. And for the US, again, there may be some news along the lines of financial policies, earnings, and also gold and silver prices, which I think there may be peaking for the year at that time. At the same time, the 15th of December, we'll also see Mars actually conjuncting the South Node. So yet again, the time of increased probability of a major earthquake, accident. And at the same time, that's also when Saturn and Uranus square will become more precise, yet again, the last 2 weeks of December. So definitely, I would be paying close attention. And I know this probably will be a time of holidays for many people. However, I would be, careful to not be traveling to places that may experience an earthquake or are known for, being earthquake prone. Let's see, and in terms of ongoing background influences, in addition to what I already mentioned, we have this ongoing influence of Saturn and Uranus square. And for the US, through end of February, there will be some confusion regarding like military sports, those kind of areas, due to the difficult transit of Neptune that's unfolding. There will also be we will also be experiencing an important transit of Jupiter through the sign of Pisces, and this will pick up also right at the end of December. Currently, Jupiter has retrograded into Aquarius briefly, but it's right at the end of Aquarius, and what will be basically experienced, or typically has been the case in the past with Jupiter going through Pisces, is increased focus on all the Piscean matters, so things like excessive floods, or kind of too much inventory of, say, oil or some chemicals or chemical pollution, or excessive precipitation, or concerns about water supply, or perhaps, again, too much water, and perhaps, also companies in those areas may experience either, again, that they have too much supply of, say, oil or of some chemical stored up, to the point where things are kind of bursting at the seams, literally, and therefore, there may be some, maybe there's too much floating like oil storage, but also there may be some maritime accidents leading to spill of that, chemical or oil into the water. But also there may be really massive, or there's at least potential for really massive, and I mean enormous profits for companies in the areas that are related to Pisces, Neptune. So those would be, again, beverages, music, movies, religion, anything spiritual, like, I don't know, yoga. But by spiritual, I mean things that are related to those kind of areas. Obviously, yoga can be looked at in different ways. But anything to do with obviously oil, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, even water, selling water, anything that's liquid. So there may be really either too much of something, again, floods, too much inventory, but also there's really major potential for massive profits from those areas. And especially things will be culminating sometime around the 3rd, 4th of April of 2022, when Jupiter will conjunct Neptune, which, of course, Neptune rules Pisces, and it's going to be in its own sign. And those two planets, they're quite friendly with each other, Jupiter and Neptune. And when they get together, it's a sign of, like winning a lottery or jackpot or something along those lines. So, again, and the areas that may benefit from it would be specifically related to Neptunian domains that I just mentioned. And finally, there's also this ongoing general background influence that is significant for China, and the times for that would be from about August 2nd through October 8th of this year, and then next year, April 18th through May 24, December 5 of 2022 through March 11 of 2023. And at that time, there may be an increased focus on things like international relations, partnerships, and again, those one-on-one partnerships, not necessarily so much being as a part of organization, but more like deals one-on-one, and especially those that involve areas related to Mars. So again, it could be sports, for example, or it could be military, weapons, or anything that's like a engine, anything that moves really fast and is hot. And there we may hear about some surprising deals being reached, or some surprising developments where maybe a partner that is a new partner that's completely different, somebody that maybe, of course, we're all on planet Earth, but who else could there be? But something that's like, something's unusual about that partnership, where it's a new partner or a partner with whom, the deals previously were done completely differently, or it could be an ongoing agreement that is suddenly breached or canceled, but then also suddenly is restarted, or it could be a promise of starting an agreement, but suddenly something comes up totally unexpected and the agreement is never reached. So there were a lot of kind of possibility of for surprises, either again who the partner is or partners are, or in terms of what the actual agreements, details are, or it could be again the sudden abrupt nature of those agreements being entered and just quickly canceled. At the same time, also there may be increased focus on things like sports, military, and weapons, especially anything to do with like airspace, airplanes, rockets, etc. And there too may be a lot of surprises and again some new announcements, some innovation, and things may come up very quickly and very rapidly, but very surprisingly. At the same time, when things come up too fast, there's a greater probability for there being accidents and just things kind of flaring up and being a little bit out of control. But also it could be something that's just super innovative and maybe again some innovation related to airspace, electric cars, vehicles, etc. And there may also be sudden changes in leadership leading such projects. Again, the new project comes up and there's a new leader, everybody's very excited about it, but then suddenly things are canceled. But then 2 weeks later, again, things are restarted again, equally, surprisingly. So definitely something along the lines of innovation, surprises, and unusual deals or deals that perhaps are usual as in typical, but the pace with which they're entered into or canceled may be unusual. So that's about it for me for this week and a little preview of the upcoming weeks. And I hope you found this useful and come back and check me out next week. Until then, have a great week, everyone. Bye.